The one thing I particularly have been doing this weekend though, since we got back, is I was gonna try and keep the momentum going, but then like I woke up like the first morning of my weekend, which was like Sunday morning, and I was just
Mhm.
like, no, I'm chilling this weekend. I'm catching a breath of fresh air before I go back to steamrolling all the things I need to get done.
Yeah, man, I gotta tell you, when I came home from running around that 2nd week with you guys out there, I was spent. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, that was a long week. We did a ton, it was interesting, and we'll get into it later in the show, I'm sure, but, you know, um, we didn't even put in our notes here, the fact that we had, some embedded reporters with us, so we'll talk about
Yeah.
that, but, to wear, 2 sets of reporters out
Well,
day after
failure on our
day.
part, but it's also kind of like a secret nugget too.
What was it? Say that again?
Wow, 1 second.
Yeah.
I was trying to do something in the background. I think I jacked up the whole connection.
I
I
was
was
like,
just
"What
saying
is
that
he
like it's
saying
kind of
right
like
now?"
a nice little hidden nugget.
Yeah, yeah. There's gonna be a lot of, us talking about some things tonight and then going, "Oh, yeah, I remember, doing this," because, I mean, we just a jam-packed week with you guys and then a jam-packed week before that even, so, yeah, getting everybody up to date tonight is gonna be, you know, it's gonna be a task is gonna what it's gonna be, kind of reliving all that,
Yeah.
but, yeah, I was wore out, man. I came home, um, when we get home, probably 9 o'clock in the morning or so, 9, 10 o'clock. I think you guys got back to Jordan's a little bit before I got back here.
Yeah.
And my wife and kids, they had a market that day anyway. And I was like, oh, thank God, man. I'm gonna unpack and scrub my body and I'm gonna take a damn nap is what I'm gonna do. And I'm
Yep.
gonna tell you, man, that was one of one of the greatest naps I think I've ever taken. I fell asleep so hard. You know when you fall asleep and like your right side of your face, it feels like it's already, pushed against the left side of your face. Oh man, I slept hard. Probably had to wash my pillow again after that, after having gasoline all over it and everything else, man. God.
That might have been one of my favorite parts of the trip is like you realizing that the gas can burped gasoline all over your pillow.
Oh, it's terrible. The first night and like that happened and I think that was Monday night. I was literally sleeping in the cab, the back part of my truck, not the bed, but like in there. And you trying to get all snuggly because it was in the 30s. And
Yeah.
boy, golly, just to have that, fresh douse of gasoline straight there on the pillow, man. You had, like flip it, turn it upside down, try to sleep at the other end of that thing. Maybe open a window a little bit so you're not dying
Be
of
wise.
noxious fumes. Oh God, suck.
Killing brain cells while you're sleeping.
Oh, I'll tell you what though, not having a pillow in that situation, I would have gotten no sleep whatsoever.
I did all right. My sweatshirt worked out pretty well for my pillow.
My pillow. Yeah, for everybody that's here early, we do have some pictures of some stuff that that we did up there, and we'll take you guys through that as well. But going to be a little bit of a different feel for tonight's show, and we'll probably reiterate this at the top of the hour. We're just going to have kind of a chill show where we recap. We're not going to get into it's a fairly heavy subject. There's because we are who we are, we have a lot of dark humor, great and everything, but there's also just the reverence and respect for the community that we were up there with. And I mean, boy, I'll tell you what, I don't know about you, Mike, but coming back from that, I mean, changed. I mean, it literally changes you.
Yeah, well, like I mean, some of the hardest parts were actually like being there and talking with like the locals, and they get emotional just by you showing up, and like that's hard to fight. And then like I mean, it's hard to fight like getting emotional in the moment. Like I mean, there's all this nonsense about guys need to be more vulnerable, but like if you're out there to do a mission, like you're not gonna like you can't afford to start bawling your eyes out while you're in the middle of
Well,
trying to trying to provide strength for a community that's been absolutely shattered in more ways than one.
Yeah, you show up as the quote unquote hero or somebody who's rescuing everybody else, and you're the one who's a mess and crying. Like you're not adding you're not adding value to the
Yeah,
situation.
you're not helping that area or those people feel more secure. I can tell you that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but then there's obviously the I think the most surprising part was like how close our relationships got to the people that were out there, that like the people that we made multiple touch points with, and then making the last touch point, like just doing a last round kind of like wellness check with these groups and making sure they've got everything that they need, or like what they could need in the future we could continue to help out with. Like that level of emotionality too, like that hit really hard. Like they didn't like they guys they didn't want us to leave. Like that was probably the most wild part to me, because like
You're coming back, right?
Appalachia. Huh? What's that?
Like you're coming back, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like I mean, like in a region of the U.S. where it's like Appalachia is known for, hey, this is my area.
Get off
You're
my
not
lawn.
from here. Like, get the hell out of my woods, or I'm going to shoot you. And like, they don't want you leaving. Like, that's pretty powerful stuff.
Very, I mean, yeah. When you can, I don't want to say like that would be the wrong word. I almost said infiltrate. Like that's not the right word. When you can
Yeah.
befriend a community that's very tight knit, so much so sometimes like down to the structure, down to the property tight knit. Um,
Yeah.
when you can befriend an area and a people and that culture, I think the way we were able to, and you know, have, be a real asset for them, and not only just an asset, but like a human being, another human being that
Yeah.
actually cares and gives your time voluntarily for them. It changes a dynamic, and it maybe opens them up to. I hate to say it, like could be a double edged sword, right? Because you've got people who want to come in and do good things, but then there's people that will also prey on those same people, try to open the door and do some good things, and then take advantage of them. And that's obviously not what you want. You want these guys to be as strong as they are. I mean, to see the Appalachians up there and what they've been able to do in such a short amount of time, just a super testament after such biblical destruction.
Oh,
But
you mean like the redneck roads? Like the
dude,
hillbillies are just coming together, just pushing a bunch of dirt and like whatever would work to like allow vehicles to drive across the formerly flooded creek or river.
I mean, I went over and told my dad about this, and my mom. They're like, "Where have you been?" And I was like, "Well, I've been up in North Carolina." And they're like, "What?" And the first thing out of my mouth is I was just like driving through, coming east out of Knoxville and coming up and over Johnson City, 6-hour trip from Knoxville, which is usually maybe what 2 hours. It should be. And I got to the first checkpoint where, a sheriff's deputy stopped me, and, there's dump trucks in the background doing some things. And she said, "Hey, you can't come through here." And I said, "Hey, I'm working on the PACE plan back here," which for those of you guys that may not speak, the PACE plan is a comms plan. It's a primary alternate. I always forget, Steve, is
Would it be contingency?
contingency and emergency. Yeah, I always
Okay.
forget contingency. But I said I'm working on the PACE plan, for these guys, and she was like, "Okay, but understand it's at your own risk." And I've got that double axle trailer with the Polaris 6-seater on the back of it, ready to go out there. And she's like, "Some of these roads are not good, man." And I was like, "I understand. I'll take it easy and take it slow." And so I may have gotten 2 or 3 miles down the road, and you start to see the destruction, the absolute wash, and roads are starting to deteriorate to the point where you see all these dump trucks coming in and out. And what they've done is this place that came around a bend and kind of in a ravine there. They've literally, there's no bridge left, none, it's gone. And 40 feet down and 40 feet back up, these awesome rednecks have gone out there. They've put in like a multitude of 10-foot culverts, and then just pounded it with sand and riprap and gravel. And so instead of straight across, you would drive down over the culvert and then back up. And I was like, dude, these guys did this in a matter of days. and you're just like, welcome to Appalachia, because these people are incredible.
Like the fact that there's just like you'll come across a guy with like a problem like that. It's like, oh, I got a bulldozer on my property. I'll be right back. It's like, why do you have a bulldozer?
Why do you not have a bulldozer?
Yeah.
How are you going to recover from things if you don't have a bulldozer up here? And I think that's kind of just the way of life. I mean, I've definitely gotten to that point now, living on a mountain, where I'm like, man, I really wish I had a bulldozer or a skid steer or something like that. I think it's obviously in the future, if I'm going to remain a mountain man out here, like, you got to have heavy equipment.
Well, and like the other thing that it immediately got me thinking of too is like the whole target softening and like any issues here in the US, like we've talked about with like Civil War or whatever. Like I found out personally about a couple like moonshining operations that I weren't operational today, but they had built a cave system into the mountains. And I was just like, dang, like I didn't realize that like these, like there would actually be like whole cave networks up here that supported the moonshiners back during the Prohibition. And like, what? They're basically the Viet Cong up there in the Appalachians. And I was like, okay, this makes me even more proud to be an American.
Yeah. It's a special place. I mean, and I mean that in so many different ways. Having lived up here for over 4 years now, in the mountains, and to see it and kind of be part of it. And, as a kid, we would go up to the Nantahala National Forest a lot of times every summer, and we'd camp out, we'd shoot the nanny, and then in the winter a lot of times.
What does shoot the nanny mean?
So the Nantahala is the river, right? And so
okay,
shooting the nanny
sounds like you're shooting grandma or something. I was just like, what?
Yeah,
like, I don't know about that.
Shooting the nanny is going up and going for a raft ride or a kayak or something like that. And then in the winter, a lot closer to where we were, Mike, up at Beech Mountain, Hawks Nest, Cataloochee, like these are some of the highest peaks in the Appalachians, and they're also the most southern. So, if you're from North Georgia and you're trying to get on a hill and just do a little bit of skiing or snowboarding and kind of screw around in Appalachia, it's the easiest place to get to. Some of these places, like you saw, Big Bald, 5,500 feet, Mount Mitchell,
so cool.
Yeah, Mount Mitchell, which is just on the other side. I think that's right around 6,300 or something like that. And obviously elevation changes a lot of things fast. I think you lose about 3 degrees for every 1,000 feet you go in altitude. So there is skiing on the East Coast in the southern United States, and to have been there and been doing this for now decades, I don't know, it was just one of those places that I was like, we got to go help these guys. And boy, I'll tell you what, to get these guys any kind of help when they're as self-reliant as they are, I think that's saying something.
Yeah, I'm really glad I joined you guys in going out there.
Yeah,
I would have missed out on a lot of I think that's like going out there is probably going to be one of the probably top memories for my life, because like
it's a lot.
Yeah, we'll get into the reasons why it was a lot.
Yeah, it's 7:00, guys. So we're not gonna hit the regular intro. Just don't think it's really appropriate. There's a lot of reverence and respect that we have for the population up there, and we've got kind of a loud opening most times. So we're not going to do that this time around. We're just gonna me and Mike are gonna recap a little bit. We talked to the other guys that were out there, Jordan and boy, why am I blanking? And Randy both have some things to do tonight with some trick or treating and some smaller ones. And Gabe's got a commitment to his daughter. So family first here at Bitcoin Veterans, and no shame there. We've obviously had kind of a chaotic schedule lately. We've taken a pause in doing our weekly show, and this is probably going to continue a little bit in terms of being a little more sporadic. I have plans to go back probably even before next week. Before next week is over, for at least a couple days. We've got some new missions that we're lining up. There are some needs in the area. Heat continues to be one of them, but tiny houses for a lot of people who are displaced, whether it's on their land or grouping these things on a grouped piece of donated land. to get people out of the elements. And really, what we're trying to do is have as many people survive the winter up there as possible. And this is obviously one of the biggest threats that we face. It's the here and now threat that is coming fast. We got a little taste of it while we were up there, Mike.
Yeah, a little bit. Dude, it got like that. I think it was it the, I think it might have been the first morning that we woke up after sleeping in that construction site. That first morning where we were getting all the trucks all loaded up, ready to like move out and actually start carrying out like our first like official missions. And it started sleeting on us while we were out there. And I was just like, oh God, if it's gonna start sleeting and these roads are gonna start icing over, this is gonna be, we'll just say it's gonna be fun. But we got really lucky that it sleeted for maybe 20-30 minutes. Like I was already counting blessings and we were only a couple hours in.
I guess I should probably, since we've already mentioned this, you can kind of see here the Blue Sleeping Bag Club.
Yep. We're protecting ourselves with those direct energy weapons.
Yeah, I got to tell you guys, this is an upgrade. The house didn't have any heat. It was just, I mean, the week before it was nothing but the drywall and drywall dust. I was there in one of these rooms by myself, and lucky to have it. I mean, it was cold, and we were sleeping in the back of trucks, tents, in parking lots. We were not, living it up by any stretch of the imagination. And I'll tell you, when these guys showed up, it kind of put a smile on my face, because I had been rolling around with the Christian Rangers for a week, and it was a lot of all business and everything, and there wasn't these close personal ties that had been established, obviously, like we've done. And so to have Jordan and Mike join me out there and spend the night and kind of embrace the suck a little bit, I think we had for what it was, this part, these are the things that you'll remember about your brothers for the rest of your life. I mean, I think we were cracking jokes and doing things in these places. And I know I said respect and reverence like we did, but there was a time when, at the end of the day, when everything calmed down and we're kind of getting back to get ourselves tucked in and maybe get a few winks during the night, that we had a good time.
That's the thing about being, like, particularly being men and being men that like have served, like people on the outside, like they struggle to understand, but every vet that I've ever encountered understands that, like, when you're going through like some stuff that's really difficult, whether it's difficult because it's dark or it's difficult because it's hard to do, like a lot of times you need to get a boost of energy from having some maybe dark humor or making some inappropriate comments at a different time, but making the inappropriate comments so everybody can get a laugh. Cause I think everybody knows that laughter is like the most powerful medicine.
Oh yeah, by far. I mean, I remember being overseas and doing, just the most heinous stuff in the world, right? In terms of combat and being in shit sandwiches and all that kind of stuff. If at the end of the day, when things are calm and you're with your buddies and you can't have a laugh, man, that is a dangerous place to be in terms of psychology and mentality. Like
it's a cauldron for rumination, depression. Like that can be, I could also see those environments of where people aren't kind of like giving their soul and their mind like that little mental break with some levity. If they aren't doing that, like you're talking about deeply ingraining some stuff that is by making it more deeply ingrained, by not having the laugh and getting a little bit of that outburst out. You're really setting yourself up for trying to dig out a problem that gets very deeply rooted.
Yeah.
And if you've ever ripped a tree out, you know that the deeper the roots go, the harder the work is to replace it.
Yeah. A lot of scar tissue and that kind of thing. I guess I'll kind of start from the beginning a little bit, if you don't mind, and I'll kind of regress and we'll get into some stuff. One of the things, when this first came up, for me, we just barely missed the eye of the storm here in North Georgia, and like literally went right over their house around 6 a.m. And I was nervous. I'm not going to lie. I heard from one of my buddies down in Savannah about the rain and the tornadoes that were coming in. I was like, man, it's going to get bad. And, obviously it did, but it didn't get bad over us. We had a little bit of wind, a lot of rain, and, very, very slight damage, nothing crazy. And when I saw that, North Carolina was not receiving the disaster response that they should have in that time, I kind of looked at my wife and I was like, look, God's kind of put this on my heart. And, I was same guy that ran in after 9/11. Right? I was like, somebody's got to go do something. Like you can't always point, the finger at somebody else. I mean, I wish somebody would do something. Sometimes you got to be the person that does something. And so talked to the guys and said, hey, this is what I'm gonna do. Think we need to raise some funds and get moving. The mission for me was force multiplication, getting up into the mountains, finding some veterans that were assets in their community that were already, moving and had a lot of things in place that were mostly ready, but maybe not all the way ready. And by all the way ready, I mean maybe they didn't have a generator, maybe they didn't have communication set up. Giving a veteran that knows what they're doing comms and power allows them to do so much more in terms of affecting not only themselves but affecting the people around them. So if you go out and you can find these key people, these key individuals in these places, which they stick out like a sore thumb because they're literally out trying to do things. They're running around like madmen with their hair on fire a lot of times, and they kind of walk like us and talk like us, and so you kind of understand. So my first mission was to do that, and so I picked up some Meshtastic radios over at Jordan's house. He had something like 50 of them. We built them late at night on his porch the first night, and then I think it was Sunday. It took me about 6.5, 7 hours to get into Burnsville, and I got to tell you, first impression rolling into Burnsville, I needed some gas. Luckily, one of the gas stations was allowing you to pay with $50 cash, and that was all you could get. And I got out of my car. I was going to see if I couldn't, get a signal. And lo and behold, the only signal you could get was off of the satellite. And I don't know if anybody's ever seen this, but this was a first for me where I got out and it said, hey, would you like to connect to a satellite? Because there's absolutely nothing else going on. And hit the little tab on the phone and it says, turn this way, turn this way. All right, link established. Send your text message to your loved one basically, and then carry on because nothing was going on. The other thing I noticed that and this is something that's going to be unpleasant for some, is it smelled like death. I mean, you could just smell it in the air, and we're talking about days in at this point. So you kind of sets the tone for coming in out of the mountain passes, taking the long route in. There's no power, there's no energy whatsoever, no water, and there's no signal. You are cut off. You're back in time now, and people are lost in the woods, like literally buried, waiting for help, hoping and praying like hell for miracles at this point. And to have that kind of scene and death in the air, exactly, how vital time is to everybody. And so, first thing we did, went out to an HLZ with these guys that we met up with, thanks to Jordan. Jordan had a buddy that knew these guys. They were called the Christian Rangers. We are still working with these guys today. Incredible group of guys. And I mean, absolutely incredible. A lot of them Green Beret, a lot of them work on Robin Sage. If you don't know what Robin Sage is the culmination of the Green Berets training, and it happens in the Western North Carolina mountains. So these guys are right at home. They know it's like they've been training for these kind of things their entire life. They're now on permissive soil with their people with no language barriers whatsoever, and they are ready to get to work. Fortunately for me, I got to work with an ODA team, which is Operational Detachment Alpha. It's a Green Beret team when I was overseas in 2004 for a few months, and learned very quickly, how these force multiplication missions work. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to go up there and do what I did. And so I guess I'll share with you the first picture. Because of you guys and raising funds and Meshtastic and Freedom Tech within Bitcoin veterans, you guys and Gary in particular brought in Meshtastic for me. You can see in this picture, there's a guy with a tattoo in the foreground on his right arm. This was his property. They didn't have any power. They didn't have any communications to the outside world from there. And I walked up, shook his hand that morning, and had a group of guys with me and said, "Hey, man, can you use some power and some communications?" And he said, "Yeah, that would be a real nice thing, right?" So I started talking to him and got his background. Happens to be another Green Beret from third group that we didn't even know was in the area. And he's not only I should say his wife was running this helicopter landing zone, HLZ, which we called HLZ Zombie. And then, I had my own personal Starlink in the back of my truck, gave that to him, had a generator. Here's a generator to run these things, and then spun him up on Meshtastic, which I think you can probably see in his right hand that he's holding there. And he was absolutely grateful, and his family was grateful to have. He's got 3 kids, not much different in age than my kids, and I got to tell you, to see their faces light up, to know that they could reach out to the outside world, that they're going to have a little bit of power, possibly a hot shower, things like that. I mean, just brought me a lot of joy. And I think, first and foremost, this is the force multiplication mission. And I'll tell you why. This guy obviously has his own HLZ on his own property, but his wife is running that during the day because he is running an airport, a private airport over at Avery during the day himself, which means we have now the reach into airborne assets, which is pilots for not only search and rescue, but also for resupply and bringing all sorts of supplies into the region and getting them distributed to the proper point. So staging areas and things like that. First thing, right after we got this guy set up, we started to have the UH-60s come in from the National Guard down in Charlotte. We got those guys trained up on Meshtastic, and then put those in as repeaters for the broader area to fly during the daylight hours. So that now we are expanding from, I think it was 2 network, I should say 2 nodes out there in that network in the Burnsville, Avery, Mitchell area. And that was all we had at first. And I think by the time you guys arrived, we had somewhere around 60 to 70 different nodes in that area. And that's just, that was part of our PACE plan. It was part of, getting communications up and running so that these guys who were down doing search and rescue in the valleys or needed, something, could get it, because there's no other service out there whatsoever. All right, so I'll remove that. But you kind of start to see and understand, what the plan is. I think within the first couple days, we had at least 10 generators set up. We had, I think, 3 Starlinks set out, and I can't even tell you, probably over 10 different Meshtastics to key personnel and key leaders in the area, which we established quickly all over the map. And that's all thanks to everybody back here, everybody within our groups that's communicating, that's doing, the raising of the funds and everything else. Unbelievable logistical support and just support in general from everybody.
Well, and I like one thing that I think one of my favorite parts about how all of it's like, maybe not how all of it started, but like the way everything went, especially early on, was, guys, I wish we could show you guys like the chat that we had been using, the centralized kind of like operational command that we had put together with the Christian Rangers. Like the amount of information that was pouring through these chats every day for like the first week since the disaster, of like where we got like the documents set up. So we were tracking all the different landing zones, the HLZs, and like the different distribution points, the different points of contact. So everybody had everything that they could potentially need. Like everybody's chiming in with new spots that they can add to it and all that. Like this, it was very, I'll just say that I didn't see any evidence of the internals of the U.S. military operating that smoothly with groups that had never worked together before. Like that was cool.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a good segue into actually watching the operations unfold on the ground. What you're not talking about here is the bureaucracy and the political, the politicization of the troops. I think, everybody's dealt with it at one time or another. If you were in and you reached a rank of corporal or, E4 or higher, right? Like if you ever if you were ever that guy that was giving out orders and having to deal with taking orders from somebody else, you know, you always scratch your head and you're like, why the fuck would we do that? Right. And like, I think that's everybody out there.
Well, it is like what goes along with that too, though, is like when you're in even that E4 position, even though it may seem lowly, is like there's situations where another unit's commander might try and order you around. It's like, nope. Like, you can pound sand, you can take that to my commander, and if he wants me to do it, you can pass it on down. But just because of your rank, like, no, that's not happening.
Yeah, that sometimes that, I mean, the Marine Corps works a little bit differently in some different places, and you know, like if there's somebody who's giving you an order and all that kind of stuff, if your gunnery sergeant isn't around, a lot of times, man, it's like you got to follow orders, and especially if it's some brass, you know, they're going to be like, hey, who's this and who's that, and that's when things start to get interesting. But
my experience might be a little bit different too, because Army aviation, like they're like the stepchild between Air Force and the Army. It's like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah, the no answer doesn't fly a lot in the Marine Corps. But I will, you know, but just a great juxtaposition there in terms of watching small units of motivated men that know what the mission is, just take responsibility and start doing things. And for me to see that unravel, to understand what the actual potential is for veterans, special operations veterans, and volunteers out there to come together that have maybe never worked together before, to see what those people can accomplish in a 24-hour period, or a week, or 2 weeks, or 3 weeks. It will boggle your mind. It will absolutely blow your mind. And I will say that because you can't keep up. You cannot keep up with everything that's going on. And the guys that are doing the coordination and the control part, I have such a high respect for those guys, because I'm an ops guy, man. Like, I am the guy that's going to go out and actually, you know, try to take on whatever mission I can do, and then move on to the next piece of that mission, or the next mission, and the next mission, and the next mission. And like, the guys that are coordinating and knowing, like, they know where we're all at, what we're all doing, what, you know, how we're checking in, and, you know, who's where, and who's on deck, and who's off deck, and who's, you know, slated to be where. And that is that administration side that there's some sort of like Asperger's or autism that I think, you know, they have. It's their special form of it, man. My deepest, most respect for all the guys that were doing the coordination, and allowing the guys who do go out and operate and interface and coordinate with the key leaders in the area. Unbelievable.
Yeah, like this. It's definitely autism. I don't think you need to sugarcoat it.
Yeah,
it's a healthy mixture of autism and ADD, because you're getting inputs and information from all these different sources, and then a lot of times it's like these individuals are the ones that are getting all this information that seems like it's like siloed, but then understanding how they relate to other bits of the operations that are going on. It's like, okay, like this needs to be here. These people need to be informed.
Yeah,
like that's dude. I'm just going to say, like, I played a small piece, a very, very small piece of that. And it's like, it was very, very fun.
Yeah. The ops side. Yeah. When you guys got in and we started running ops, our 3-man team, like, that was incredible. I mean, just balls to the wall. Let's go. Guys, we're going to talk about a few things tonight. One of the things and maybe I should just lay it out for you guys. We're going to talk a little bit about, you know, where our mission is heading, what we're going to be applying our funds to. We're going to talk about some of the 5th generation warfare, some of the events on the ground that are happening out there, some of the fuckery, a lot of the fuckery. This will probably be the juiciest bit, right? Like, you know, a lot of the things that mainstream is not going to tell you, and then obviously having firsthand accounts now. And, you know, we can talk a little bit about, you know, the damage and the flood, and the tornadoes as well. And Mike, where would you like to go next on this?
Well, let's follow like the kind of like that tentative plan he gave, because like let's talk about, because like one thing that I think really sets us apart is that we got to that point of raising $115,000. Like, you guys are amazing. Like, when we first started, I was expecting like, oh yeah, 3,000, 5,000 at best. And then all of a sudden in like what, like it was like 3 or 4 days, it was up to like 30 or 60 or something like that. And then it just snowballed. Like like all you guys that contributed, like you guys are freaking heroes in your own right. But like the thing that I was surprised that we all agreed upon, because I think Shane, you were the first. I think you might have been the first, like the one to bring it up. Was like, hey, let's pause donations. Like, there's all like we've got so many funds right now. Like, and especially with like the execution on the ground. Like, I was expecting the money to just fly out, but
I
there
think
was
Jordan and I were both kind of, I don't know if it was him or me, but I think we were all thinking like, all right, we've really spent very little to date, and I think we were already a week in.
yeah.
And I mean, at this point, we had probably supplied somewhere over 20 generators at this point from Bitcoin veterans, and not to mention all the other ancillary, whether it's sleeping bags, extension cords, um,
Carhartts.
warm, cold weather gear, things of that nature. And so, like, we're barely touching this resource, and in terms of funding, and it's like, all right, guys, like, let's be real smart about this. And I think the diligent side of us was like, all right, we're kind of sussing out who the key leaders are in the area, what the who's trustworthy, who's not trustworthy. And at that point, you start to kind of come up with a plan. All right, we've got this pile of money over here, and we're not going to be like the federal government or even the state government, possibly even the local government, where we're just going to throw funds at something willy nilly and have it disappear. One of the reasons why you can't do that is just because the op tempo of volunteers in the area, they don't have the hands. So let's just say we had a tractor trailer full of generators. Where are you putting it? Because the warehouse space is thin. You can't leave it in the tractor trailer. It's got to be offloaded somewhere. And if it's offloaded somewhere, then it's got to be secured. And security is a big deal for high ticket items like that. So
Well,
there are
especially you're dealing with like disaster area, like a lot of the areas that would have been or could have been useful for staging and everything, they're likely either filled with debris or they're filled with refugees because they don't have a home, and or they're filled with people that are flooding into the area to provide assistance. Like space was very short to come by out there.
Yeah, I mean, and then we were, you're always trying to find somebody who's trying to find space. One of the great key leaders engagement that we ran into is some farmer from Iowa. He came down, he started making connections. He saw this warehouse space, got in touch with the owner of it, and that became the central place for the guys over at PCCR that were running an Operation Heatwave in the area. And so that was one of our, and hats off to Tim McKinney from PCCR for making that happen. Those guys have actually met their goal. They've raised over $325,000. I think they've supplied more than 100 generators in the area, and it's time for them to go back and do some other things. So there's other missions out there. I guess that's one of the reasons why we're not just going, oh hey, let's just spend all the money. Like that would be irresponsible of us. It would be
That's what
irresponsible.
the government does.
Yeah, and to put this, as as impactfully as possible, as potently as possible, in the right hands of the right people. That is what we owe everybody who donated, and I would accept nothing less. I know Mike and everybody else here at Bitcoin Veterans. This is how it's got to be. This is the incentive structure that Bitcoin provides us, because I think I've talked about it a little bit, but there is this there's this attention economy that we're in now, that people talk about. What people are not talking about yet is the name economy. The name economy, you're in it, and just a kind of a not a warning, but like, hey, your name going forward in this space, in the Bitcoin space especially, is very important. And if you're going to be one of those people that is full of fuckery and doing things that you shouldn't be doing, and you get found out, there's not going to be people that want to be around you, not people that want to do business with you. And that is, how do you go out and accomplish missions like this, where people are going to donate in disaster situations, if you lose your name in the name economy? And I think that's another really healthy cultural U-turn that we're doing right now because of Bitcoin.
Yeah. Well, and like, yeah, it's funny how like in order to explain a lot of these things, you have to kind of loop through the Keynesian economics and money printing flywheel conversation to be able to explain how we've got to this point in America where names aren't important because like reputations can be like destroyed, but then hey, they go off and they get hired by somebody else who has a bigger paycheck for them, and then like all that stuff gets brushed under the rug.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's talk about the kind of the next mission, and this is kind of where we're heading. We're talking. I was talking with Mike over at Christian Rangers today, and there is obviously a need for housing in the area. Not everybody's getting put up in the hotel rooms because FEMA's in them first and foremost. You've got FEMA and state officials and things like that are soaking up resources in the housing complex, if you will, like where they could be taking people who are displaced. Instead of putting FEMA in there, they could put those people in there for at least a little while, and avoid the hypothermia, which is literally killing people at night on the ground, that don't have proper lodging. So
well, we got warning of or notification of what was it? 15 had died in a 48-hour period because of hypothermia. Like that was, I think that was like the first night or the second night of the first day, like that we were out there when we had that key leadership meeting.
Yeah, we had 2 really cold nights. The second night it dipped down into the upper 20s. And when we had that key leadership meeting early on in the week, it was either Tuesday or Wednesday. People came back and reported that there was 15 cases of hypothermia, absolute tragedy that, you can't stay warm enough in the mountains of, Appalachia after an event like that. Just terrible. So, with these tiny houses, these guys have got the cost, totally equipped down to about $3,000. And, that's delivered. So having, some tiny houses delivered to an area that is going to get extremely cold, extremely fast is going to save lives. And it's going to keep families together through, maybe the worst turn of events that they've ever experienced before. And I think that's pretty important.
Well, and like I don't think there's a maybe in that. Like we had talked about what we observed at the key leadership meeting that we hosted, or we helped host. It was led by the Christian Rangers, but we helped host it. That it was very evident that the leaders of the community that we had met with were in an absolute state of prolonged shock. Like the amount of just like how overwhelmed they were with everything that was coming in. And because it's their home, there's a drive to help every soul that comes to you that needs assistance. And we kind of ourselves and the Christian Rangers, we kind of had to give them the kind of the bitter medicine of informing them. It's like, hey, there's going to be moments where you have to say no.
Yeah.
Because if you continue to overwhelm yourself and you're already providing a good source or a good service to your community to 5, 10, 15, 50 people, you get overwhelmed, you negatively impact the integrity of your operation, and you're going to weaken the capacity to not only continue helping people, but maybe even completely dissolve your capacity to help more people into the future. And I think that was there was a lot of painful realization on faces in that meeting when we said that.
Yeah. If for anybody that hasn't ever seen anybody in shock from a situation like this, some of the key signs are like the 500-yard stare, not blinking, just absolutely kind of like, just kind of in a zone. And
they were somewhere else that they weren't physically occupying is what was going on.
Right. Nervous tics a lot of times, if they're twitchy, if they're, kind of, looking around and things like that, it's a telltale sign that somebody's in shock. The other one, a lot of times is a kind of a fast cadence, if you will. So if somebody is talking and they're frantic and they're moving a lot, and you see hands coming up, and there's stress, right? You can literally see the stress pouring out of them as they speak, because they can't make the chaos make sense. And and a lot of times that you can't make chaos make sense. You just the mountain that you have to climb, the proverbial mountain that you have to climb to try to get life back to some sense of normalcy, is so huge that they just don't know where to begin, and they're
Yeah.
almost frantic about um the road ahead of them. And so
Yeah.
kind of slowing them down and letting them be human for a few minutes, right? Hey, listen, you're a human being. You got to take a break once in a while. Like, at some point, like Mike said, you got to take care of the people that are in shock, and especially in situations like this, just absolutely critical in terms of prolonging the effectiveness of your mission.
Yeah. And that conversation spilled over into the leadership of the Christian Rangers as well. Like, we told them, it's like, hey, we're here. We will help out in whatever ways we can. You guys need to take a break.
Yeah.
Because if you guys fail, then like our effectiveness also fails with you. So like we need you guys to keep charging yourselves so you can keep charging forward.
Yeah, yeah, and they were smoked by the time it was time to do turnover, and we kind of took the helm there for I guess the week that we were there. It was good time off for those guys as well. And it looks like now it's about time to go back and do some more work. But before we do that, let's get into some of the things in terms of fuckery. And what I mean by fuckery is the federal government, the state government, the bureaucratic side of things, and what I have dubbed the disaster welfare horse. So
Snorted because it's accurate.
yeah. One of the first things that I noticed out there is, as we were moving around, there are a lot of people in the area that just rush into the area. And I used to think of a lot of some of these organizations like, oh, hey, this group is on the ground. And I'm not going to mention any by name specifically, because a lot of them, honestly, are big, powerful organizations that have people that will do things that are not great to other people because money, right? Like, the incentive structure is broken. For those of you guys that don't understand how FEMA and disaster relief money works, let's kind of take a trip down, at least our experience with it so far. You would think in an area, in a good world, in a healthy world, when people would rush in, any resources that were available would be put towards helping volunteers. And I understand there's bad apples, and like even then, the guys that show up, especially in teams that are looking to do things with credentials, especially special operations, or veterans, or somebody that's got a reputable organization out there that's got a long track record. And I'm not talking about the disaster welfare horse at this point. I'm just talking about people who have organizations that saw a need and answered the call. But that's not the case. So when situations like this occurred in the Western North Carolina area out there, what we saw was the disaster welfare horse swoop in and then start trying to lecture us about how to make money at these things. And I mean, it was right away, man. I was like, hey, let me show you the map, and let me show you the jobs that need to be done and how you get federally approved to go in here and start making money. And that wasn't what that's not what we were there for. It was one of those things that was so off-putting. You could see it, and that's how I knew I was with the right group of guys. I was doing key leader engagements from the second day on, with Micah Dunford out there from the Christian Rangers, and to see it firsthand from these groups. And one of these groups, and again, I'm not going to say names, they'll say, oh, that's not part of our group, but that's not part of our group. Yeah, they share a name, but they're not actually part of them. And then you kind of jump online and you do the research, and sure enough, there's one funding page. There's like literally one page where they take funds, and that's it. So
it's good cover.
yeah, it's crazy. And in a disaster situation where you don't have internet or any of those things, what are you doing? You're like, well, these guys are here to help. And
Yep.
not truly the case a lot of times. So what they do is they go into these websites that are approved. I should say they're approved on, and this is where the back scratching begins. You've got preferred vendors that if they're not allowed to come in, then they don't get paid. That's billions of dollars. If they're are preferred, let's just say handyman services or reconstruction services, major highway projects, if those guys can't come in and do work because let's just say the Appalachian rednecks have already put in a system right now instead of a system that's going to take them a year to do, then they don't get paid either. And
They want both of those. They
yeah,
want the immediate project because they can probably charge premiums on how fast they have to move everything, especially
yep,
with their resources. And then they get the long dated revenue stream from the big project that is actually going to be needed into the future. Like there's no, oh, hey, yeah, you guys can do that now and get things operational. It's like, no, we want all of it. We want all that money.
yeah. And what happens is so a group can come in and they can literally claim groups of jobs, right? So they can go in, I want that one, or I'm going to bid this one, this one, this one, and this one. And what happens is because how oversight works in the U.S. government, right? Some of the jobs never get done. Some of the jobs, maybe they don't get paid for it, but maybe they do as well. So there's this big overpromise, underdeliver in these situations, and it's not hundreds of thousands, it's millions and billions of dollars that is thrown at situations where sometimes things never get done, and that's just the start of it. So when we came into this area,
One real quick,
go ahead.
one good kind of like tie into that of like evidence that it happens is look at the funding project for setting up all those charging stations across the US. Wasn't
Yeah,
it like 8 billion or $1 billion or something like that? And 7 of them got built. It's like, that's a prime example of what Shane's talking about.
yeah. Only in this case, people are dying because now we can't get supplies to them. We can't get them cut out. We can't do what we need to do in the immediate need. And people are literally walking through the woods. You got kids walking through the woods barefoot and everything else out there, and it's horrific. And they care more about the money side of it and being comfortable and staying in the nicest hotels they can stay in during a disaster, on top of a mountain. Like, that's who these people are. And when you say, hey, you got one of those things built, you got one of those programs built for just the volunteer side where we're coordinating the needs and the volunteers with people like, oh, hey, man, we've got a volunteer over here who has, let's just say, a skid steer, and this guy over here needs a new driveway. You got anything like that? No, man, there's no money in that. And I could do it, but I'm gonna need millions of dollars to develop this piece of it. And you're just sitting there going like,
Yep.
wow, man, that like, gotcha. Don't worry. Don't need anything from you.
Yeah.
We'll
Roger
be,
that. I'm going to
yeah,
move on.
we'll be on our way. Yeah, don't ever do business with that. And this in the same characters, right? They will sit there and be like, well, this is my 30th disaster relief, that I've been on, and I've been featured on Good Morning America, and just give you the resume that those guys, fuck those guys. They are out there in force. And it's terrible. It's one of the biggest problems we have. But I wanted to kind of get into the fifth generation warfare and how that works because of this,
Yeah.
this bad incentive structure. So fifth generation warfare, a lot of you guys understand there's obviously a warfare of information going on. And how does that work in a disaster area? Well, witnessing it firsthand, obviously it behooves Bitcoin veterans to work with other reputable organizations like Christian Rangers. So if Christian Rangers is going around being, I don't know, let's just say extremist militia, then it wouldn't behoove us to work with those guys. And
bunch of fascists that make sure that they're in good shape.
yeah, and vice versa, right? It wouldn't behoove them if we were bad actors in the area and things like that. So obviously having sat in and all these command meetings and everything else, beginning of the day, end of the day, being in, a lot of the, key leader engagements, KLEs, for you guys that don't speak, I knew exactly who I was dealing with. These guys, top notch, absolutely incredible organization over at Christian Rangers. And then we start to hear some, what they call in the Navy scuttlebutt, some rumors going around, right? So this is now the play. And so there are people within our organization and their organization that are moving around, going to the different points, checking on people, checking on things, making sure that everything's okay. They don't say that they're associated with us so that they can gather intel. This is all part of it, right? So when this happens and they start to hear rumors that are floating around, like women are going out as volunteers with these guys and they're disappearing in the woods, they're never coming back. You're starting to see, between that and these guys are, militia extremists that are out here. These guys want to, come out here and pop off and start the Civil War and all those kind of things. The furthest thing from the truth. And here's how it
Well, and
happened.
I was just saying, I wanted to add, I apologize. Like
Sure,
on
yeah, go
top
ahead.
of that, like the rumors that were circulating, I was seeing on social media before we got out there that militias were having armed conflicts with local law enforcement area, and then we get out there and there's no evidence
Nope.
or reports from any firsthand accounts of any of that happening
No.
from anyone.
Yep. And so basically what's happening now and why this is happening, why are rumors starting? Well, when billions of dollars are at stake and it's coming down from the feds to the governor. By the way, the governor of North Carolina was on stage within a week and a half or so. And he's literally saying there are some places that we just shouldn't rebuild. You should take the buyout. Literally.
It was the third day that we were there
Yeah.
that
And
circulated.
so you're starting to understand, this is huge. Like there's other things going on, like the whole BlackRock lithium slash quartz mines that are out there that they bought, and you can there's a non-zero probability that yes, everything that you understand about that is not a conspiracy. Like it is absolutely happening, and it's happening in real time. So the forces that be will get on a ham radio, or they will go to a drop point and they will start to tell stories to volunteers, and they're literally making shit up. There is no firsthand account. There's no, I mean, in a world of iPhones and Android phones where there's a camera on everything and a microphone on everything, there is nothing recorded. There's no proof of this floating around on X, on social media of any sort. And what happens is you get somebody who's in shock, like most people in this area, who is handing out supplies, who's trying to be helpful, who's just, hey man, got to be careful of those Christian Rangers, got to be careful of, maybe Bitcoin veterans or something. We weren't those guys, but the Christian Rangers, because of the impact and the size of their organization, they're now a target. And so the rumor mill and the fear mongering that goes on to start trying to turn the population of the local area against these guys is critical, because the population is the one that elects the sheriff, and is the one that elects the mayors. And the sheriff and the mayors can't get rid of these guys, or else they're not going to have a job. They're not going to get reelected. But what's coming down from, the state and the feds is, if these guys are operating in your area, we're not giving you any funding. That's exactly how this entire thing works. And when you think about how absolutely grotesque and just oh, it puts me in a state of mind where I want to do bad things, right? Like there's literally volunteers out here that understand that we are on the clock. I mean, when you guys got out there at week 2 and some change, whatever it was, they were still cutting people out of communities that hadn't been cut out yet. Like,
They were still cutting people out when we were leaving.
yeah.
Like the week after.
And so for these guys to sit there and be like, well, if these guys are in your area, then we're not going to give you the funding to go out there and do the things that you could be doing. And that to me is just the most heinous thing you could possibly do in a situation like that. I mean, if you're an elected official or a bureaucrat and these are the strings you're holding over people's heads for money, there is a fiery place in your future, man. I mean,
No, and if you manipulate the point of view or the opinion of the general populace, and you get public buy-in from them that they hate these groups, and then if these people have this opinion, and then the sheriff's department, or like we had some, like I believe we had some evidence of even local fire departments engaging in it, is that they get to basically run with the momentum of the local area's opinions, and then they push these groups out, and then as long as like these guys act in the same momentum or same direction as the public's opinion, there aren't going to be questions asked.
that's right.
Because if the public likes, say, the Christian Rangers, and then a sheriff comes through and just like iron hand, just curtain just comes down, he's like, nope, they're not allowed in here anymore, push them out, you can't accept any help from them, like then people are going to be like, what's going on?
Yeah,
Because they're helping us. Like, I thought they were good guys. So like that, and that's important for everybody to understand. It's like, this is a target softening strategy to spread these rumors and like weaken the public opinion of these different groups.
yeah. And this in a nutshell is how these groups operate. I'm sure this is not their first rodeo, but I would imagine this is probably one place where it didn't go their way. And I say that because of the impact these guys had when nobody else had an impact. When the state and the feds didn't show up and communication lines were going, I would think that, when you have a group of, let's just say, a very heavy veteran group with a very, centric soft group leading it, it makes for a very hard target because they know the MO, and that's the thing is they taught us the MO, and now we know what their MO is, and we have all the answers for it. And the beautiful thing is because we are decentralized and we are peaceful, and that's all we've ever done, and we're extremely hard targets. You now make it damn near impossible for these guys and their MO to fight something like that. The only thing that they really, really have is the rumor mill. And when the people don't believe the rumor mill because you leave lines of communication open, that rumor mill falls flat very quick, and you can correct it where you be like, hey guys, listen, here's what 5th generation warfare is in terms of educating the public. And once they get educated on it and they understand, like, unless you see something with your own eyes on video or something very similar, like, it probably never happened.
Yeah. And I was actually thinking there was another thing, but then I immediately lost it. Testament to how exhausted I am, I guess. But because like the other thing too is that like you can't really fault these locals for falling prey to this stuff, because like when they're in that state of shock, their entire every day, every waking hour, and every sleeping hour, because a lot of times you'll get jarred awake from like the slightest little noise that sounds out of place. They're entirely concerned with the security of themselves, the security of their family, and the security of their neighbors. So like when they hear these rumors, they're just like they're just like, I can't afford the time to try and look this up. Like, this is a concern, so I need to spread this as fast as possible so my loved ones are like prepared for it and taken care of.
Yeah, it's fight or flight at that point. And boy, what an exhausting place to be. Absolutely, it is hard to live your life in a fight or flight mode for days and weeks on end.
100%. From here, do we want to segue into something that was, well, maybe okay, actually it wasn't circulating on social media, but it should have been, was the presence of the cartel activity that we got firsthand account from. But then I believe that you have personal experience with it.
So yeah, so this is secondhand for me, but firsthand from some of the groups that we were working with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whenever there are disaster situations or wars, like obviously wars are disasters, but in any type of disaster situation, this is just a heads up for everybody. if you've got loved ones in that area that are female or little kids, this is the time to be on guard. If they are congregated in any area, or if there's any access to them whatsoever, whether they're picking up supplies in a parking lot, if they're getting gas, you name it. If they are in a disaster area and in those situations, you need to be armed, and you need to be ready to do violence in a moment's notice, because there are Venezuelan gangs. There are other gangs, I'm sure, out there, but specifically in this case, there was a Venezuelan gang running around in the Spruce Pine area and in Burnsville. And I will tell you right now, it's from a firsthand account, these guys were at a place where they were doing distribution and pickup. They had a large female presence out front, and they were in a small white van with a sliding door, that you would see. And so when the guys got wise to it, they were trying to make contact. They ran off, I should say, drove off, and then came back a while later. But when they came back, they got the license plate number. They did not catch these guys immediately. They were rounded up later on, doing a breaking and entering, and they were also found to have, a couple of different supply points that they had taken a bunch of different high ticket items, whether it was Starlink or generators or things of that nature. And so these guys were literally doing snatch and grabs in a disaster area, whether it's kids or women. Like, you'll never, ever, ever see them again. And what happens is you let your guard down for 5 seconds, and these guys are watching, and they're casing joints, and they get, there's human patterns. As soon as you spot a human pattern and you're a predator, now is the opportunity to strike. And so, if you're coming up to a drop point, or you're at a gas station or something like that, and these guys go, yep, this is the way we're going to do it. They do a couple practice runs to see how fast they can do it. And then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, that kid is gone. They're missing. That female is gone. You're never going to see them again. Within, probably an hour to 2 hours, they probably have altered their look, whether that's hair or makeup or dress or whatever it is. And they're on their way somewhere, to never, ever be seen again. And that's the reality of the situation. So just a big heads up. If you're ever in a disaster area, or something goes hot in terms of civil war here in the United States, keep those little ones and the females close by, because this is a real threat, and it happens all around the world, not just here in the United States.
Well, yeah, and then like these extreme situations, these environments where there's chaos rampant because of a natural disaster or a human-made disaster, they get effective cover for these individuals that they snatch up, because I don't know how many of you guys have heard about like the Helene effects, like particularly with the environment, but not only have entire rivers changed their direction, but there was we went down NC 197 one of the last days we were there, which is a highway that runs parallel to the Big Toe River. And we saw evidence that river, that flooding had gotten upwards up to about 30 to 40 feet.
Yeah.
And you could be looking at sediment deposits of soil that could be 10 feet deep or deeper in some of these valley areas. And so like these cartels are getting effective cover by coming in, snatching these women and kids up, and then they just get lopped into the amount of casualties in the area that are likely to never be found, whether it's buried under 10 feet of sediment, or they have fallen prey to the natural dynamics of an ecosystem where the wildlife has gotten to their body and destroyed any possibility of like identifying themselves. So it's super important. Did we want to use this? This would be a good time to kind of like segue into some more kind of like organized crime stuff that we had run into, as far as a local community with a volunteer fire department and a church. If you want, I can kind of open that up, or we can pass on that, because that's a very touchy subject, and we don't want to expose that community to any sort of
let's
issues.
Let me keep it as high level as possible.
Okay, yeah.
What I will say is, I was really impressed by let's just say some firefighters, and what they had been doing in their community, they were this community was flattened, and that's saying something for mountains, right? Like it's literally they're going to be cutting things out of this community for a very very long time, months and months and months. Like
Guys, this is the area for like we put pictures and video out on our Twitter account. If you haven't seen them, by all means go find them. This area, the lieutenant of this department, he had told us that they had encountered 5 tornadoes ranging from the strength of F3 all the way up to F5.
Yeah. So
that's insane. They were hopping across the mountain ridges.
I mean, what it does to a mountain, and you can just see it looks like scattered toothpicks. I mean, there's no trees left standing. They're snapped, they're gone. And I've seen tornado damage. I have never seen tornado damage in the mountains like this. And yeah, I mean, just a really screwed up area. To keep it as high level as possible, these firefighters stood their ground against some, let's just call them executive branch type, that are tied into some bad families. And they kept their cool. They did some amazing work in that situation. But the only thing that the only thing I ever came across out there that was like a heated type of situation where, hey man, guns are out and people are doing some really, really shitty things, was done by the government, and or under the color of law, I should say. And that to me was just another piece is, if you think in a disaster situation, and I'm not saying this for everybody, but I'm going to say this in terms of, this may not be the rule, but it definitely has, it'll happen. Like there's a non-zero probability that this happens as well. You're going to have some extremely crooked people in some very high places pull some bullshit, and that could be up into including threatening your life. And that is something you should definitely be aware of in these disaster situations. Just because you think, somebody's supposed to be the good guy, human nature and pressure in situations like this, when I guess, what I will say is it exposes real character. And
Yeah.
that at the end of the day, if your real character is being, a local mobster or doing some, heinous shit where you think you're entitled to some things, or you just don't give a flying shit about the welfare of your fellow human beings, that can spell some real bad times for people.
Well, and it's this kind of tangents off of the warning for keeping a close eye on the women and children during these environments and in these areas. It also means that, like, when I'm going to just make the assumption that everybody's going to find themselves in some sort of situation like this at least once in their life. When you find yourself in a disaster area, like, you need to watch the women and kids, like Shane said, but then you have to really focus on actions more than words, because a lot of these groups will be talking out of one side of their mouth, and then while they're talking out of the sweet side of their mouth, like whispering sweet nothings into your ear, they could be picking your pocket or they could be jabbing a knife into your back.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate, but it's the reality. When there's an opportunity, somebody's going to take it.
Yeah. I would highly recommend, if you ever find yourself in a disaster situation, some of the, obviously hallmarks is if they look like us and talk like us, maybe they're good guys, better chance of that. If you see some sort of display, whether, for Marines, it's a Eagle Globe and Anchor, or you see some, veteran license plate or something like that, or a decal on a car, just things to be aware of when you're dealing with people. And if you don't see any of those things, and I'm not saying it's, that likely, but if somebody's telling you they're going to fix everything for you, that should be a red flag. If they're telling you things that sound too damn good to be true, be careful. And also, I will definitely tell you this: if you're thinking about getting in bed with FEMA or any of these other guys, and they're like, oh yeah, hey, we've got everything for you, can we use your warehouse, or can we, can we use a couple of these, things? The answer is no, right? First and foremost, the answer is no, because they'll just confiscate your shit. They literally confiscated an entire warehouse in the area that we were in, filled with supplies that were supposed to go to people. And I guarantee you, those things did not get distributed as quickly as if the people who were running and owned that warehouse would have done it.
Well, and we're already getting some evidence, and obviously it's all social media, so get a big old hey, what's up, man? Getting the big old table assault ready for anything that you're seeing on social media. But there's seems to be some claims of continued chicanery, to choose my words carefully, going on with particularly the tiny home situation. So it seems like there's now we've already talked about the bureaucracy kind of getting in the way of good meaning Samaritans doing God's work for them. But then we're now starting to run into different bureaucracies fighting over authority and continue and like adding another level of this kind of like obfuscation of providing assistance. And what it seems to be is that we already know that there's a lot of people that have had their homes destroyed in that area. They're obviously homeless by nature. If you don't have a home, you're homeless. Now, a lot of these families are families in the sense of they have kids with them. And apparently, Department of Social Services is coming through and telling these families like, hey, we understand that this is a disaster area, but if you don't get a home, if you don't get the home situation fixed, we're going to be taking your kids. Yeah. And then those families are turning around and they're like, okay, well, we're trying to get these tiny homes set up, but then the government's coming in and telling us we need to go through all the paces of like getting these permits to set up a tiny home on our own flipping property. It's like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, we can't just like, white over some of these like rules for the time being to get these people taken care of. Like, come back through and tell them, like, hey, like, we understand like you needed the tiny home for the emergency. It's now been 5 years. You do kind of need to do the proper permitting and like get this stuff taken care of, and we'll just get it put on the books and you're going to be fine. Like, why is that so difficult?
Yeah, I think we all know the answer is they want to step in, they want to sow chaos, and they want to become the nanny state wherever they can, right? Like, they want people dependent on them. And
yeah,
the other side of this is, please understand, like, when laws get this tyrannical, disobedience becomes absolutely necessary. And if it's to protect your family, laws are not instilled to be boilerplate. And when they become destructive of family units, where they become destructive of private property or any of those things, this is a point where, this is, leave it in the hands of the jury. That, and I will say that is, at some point you're going to have to decide where that line is. And I will tell you, for me and my family, that is the red line. Nobody gets to cross that line. Nobody's taking kids. Nobody's taking property. This is it. Like, when you're in a disaster situation and threats come in from the government that are in that manner, that's something that you need to start thinking about now, as we move into this period between now and the inauguration, because I'm going to tell you right now, like, we are in the most dangerous time in world history right now.
Yeah.
There are chaos agents everywhere. The people who have obviously attempted a coup they're going for broke right now. And this is, you haven't seen the last of the chaos in 2024. Like,
well, I mean, like, they're two big operations that failed humiliatingly in a very public manner.
Yeah.
I would only expect things to continue to escalate. Like, I'm talking like, in order to get accomplished what they want accomplished, I'm expecting like some form of mass cash event to try and just, all right, we failed at trying to be precise. It's time to go broad spectrum. But another thing too that I wanted to add to the situation that I talked about with the tiny homes. It's like, if you're one of these family members and you get a threat from like one of these groups that they're going to take your kid, Have you guys seen like the amount of evidence that's come out as far as how many of these kids, when they get put through those systems, disappear?
Yeah.
Like,
They're literally the same thing as the human traffickers.
yeah,
You know, I mean, you have
absolutely not. Like this, and maybe this is another step in the whole escalation of trying to get people to start getting into kinetic conflicts with law enforcement, because like there's that directive, was it 524001? Is that what it was? The one that was that was updated on September 27th of this year to allow law enforcement to use lethal force with a populace that is protesting government action.
Yeah.
Like,
wild
dude,
stuff.
Give me a break.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe we'll finish up with this before taking these guys through, a more uplifting silver lining, red bow on this thing.
Yeah.
Let's obviously there's a lot of stuff that's happening out there. There the hills were alive with meth for a long time. There are entire valleys that are gone, and in some of those valleys there is let's just say in industrial areas with chemicals and other things that have been washed away, absolutely washed away, and now they're impregnated in the soil and wells and everything else. We know this, but we also know for a fact that the government, EPA, and the rest of these organizations out there that care about the environment, they are falsifying information in terms of contaminant levels. They're falsifying information in water, and they're doing this to drive people off of their land. And this is an absolute fact. We've talked to multiple sources in the area where they know what's what on their land. They know what the wells are. They know what the groundwater is. They know what the dirt is. They've maybe even already tested these things, and
They know how the ecosystem's responding to bad stuff too.
That's
like
right.
They pay attention to like what like the different wildlife does if something is happening to a particular stream.
That's right. And so just another reason why we don't need the federal government, because the agencies that are supposed to be there protecting are absolutely being used to do land grabs now. And that is obviously extremely unfortunate. To do that to people who are in shock and a disaster situation, to tell them that their land is no longer inhabitable by falsifying information, has got to be some of the lowest, scummiest human behavior. It's satanic, demonic, I don't know what you want to call it, but you guys are beginning
column A, column B.
Yeah, like this is what we're up against. This isn't us versus the government. There is a good and evil fight right now, and if you can't see that, that's something I think people need to prepare for.
Well, and I apologize. I'm so bad at cutting.
I was just gonna say, man, like you really need to get that in your head. A lot of the differences you think you have with other Americans, or you're just human beings at this point, this is something where, hey, this is good versus evil now. And a lot of the other bullshit, we're up against satanic, pedophilic, disaster, welfare, horror, all like the worst of the worst people on earth. That's who you're up against. So put away the little differences. Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
No, you're good, man. The other thing too about these land grabs is like, this isn't just like all of a sudden this storm came through and like BlackRock's trying to acquire these lands for pennies on the dollar. Like we had people sharing with us that BlackRock had been in the area for years, if not the better part of a decade, continuously probing these individuals to try and get them to sell their land to them. Like this isn't just like, oh, it happened and they're trying to take advantage. Like they've been trying for a long time, and then they saw a greater opportunity and chance of success by coming through now, while the population and the locals are in a state of desperation and deprivation.
Yeah, man. Where do we go? Let's do story time. Let's lighten this thing up a little bit, because for all of the shortcomings and diabolical evil behavior out of the federal government the state government and the powers that be out there that should be, taking whatever money they stole from us and applying to these situations, like, that are not doing that. There are some amazing things that we experienced. And I will tell you, working alongside of the Christian Rangers, all of you. I mean, I got to tell you, hats off to the Christian Rangers Association and an organization. Truly outstanding men and women that have been going damn near nonstop this entire time, and they have some huge numbers, some great skill sets, and just absolutely humbled to be associated with those guys in this area. When I got to start working, with Mike and Jordan last week, though, man, I got to tell you, things, being a 3-man team that had some missions out there, I saw some of the best of humanity I've ever seen.
Oh, it was so much fun. It was fun for a lot of different reasons. Like, it was fun because, like, working with you guys was just fun in general. It was fun to work on a team that there was no like real disagreements that caused any sort of like friction between coordination and like where we were going and decision making or anything like that. All of that is fun for particularly men, I think. Like, when you have a well-oiled machine and well-operating team, it's just like, let's, like, because like we were like go go go, man. Like that was one of my like most proud things about being out there was we went to an area, got it taken care of. All right, what's the next thing? Right. Well, we got to stop here for gas, and then we'll get some coffee to use the caffeine to mute our hunger cravings and maybe a little bit of trail mix, but then we're going to keep going.
Yeah.
That was a ton of fun. But like, one thing I did want to share though with everybody is when our first mission, when we went up to see our boy Blue up on the mountain.
Yeah, buddy. Let's share this one because I think this is worth it.
Dude, it's hard for me not to get choked up now talking about it, because so like what happened, guys, is we had gotten word of this particular gentleman up in the mountain. He had only been cut out, and he had not had any contact other than that. So like what we ended up doing is we went up there, and Shane had gotten information on some of his needs as far as like a generator. We brought him a Mestastic, and then he also ended up sharing with us that he needed a Baofeng ham radio. So we made a second trip up there. But the emotions were almost impossible to hold back, because like once we pulled first of all, Jordan drove his truck and pulled the trailer up to this spot, and there is probably like a quarter of a mile uphill with like maybe 3 to 6 inches of clearance on both sides.
As the guy that walked it, I'm going to say it is close to 3/4 of a mile. So yeah, and maybe this is worth telling too, as if you've never been in the mountains, these are not driveways that you just walk up and walk down willy-nilly. If
it's an investment,
you should not be there first and foremost. And if you are going to be there, you should definitely try to announce yourself so that you don't wind up with some buckshot or worse in you.
Yeah.
Didn't really understand exactly. We didn't have comms with this individual. We heard that he was in desperate need for a generator, and we were driving a truck and a trailer, and these are tight mountain roads. There are trees cut down everywhere. There's nowhere to turn around. Backing one of these things up in those situations almost and potentially impossible.
We had to take a 15-point turn with the trailer just to get up the driveway.
Yeah, and we're talking about hairpin turns getting into here. It just not a good situation. So I was like, fellas, I kind of brought us out here on this mission. I'm gonna go up here and see if I can't make contact, having no idea. So I started walking up this mountain, and the first place I saw off on the left-hand side could kind of look like a little meth shack. I started to announce myself, hey, nobody came out, and I was like, yeah, good, and then I kind of came back out of the road, and I saw that there were more trees cut going up the road, not kind of some trees, like lots and lots and lots of trees. So
like 3 to 4 foot diameter trees,
huge trees, and they're everywhere. I was like, dude, there's somebody up there. And so I kept going up, and along the way, I was like, I should probably grab a fairly good sized stick in case, these guys on the mountain have a dog. Got a stick, don't have, I'm not armed. And as I'm coming up this, hill, I do see a house finally. And so I start calling out and I get no answer. And I'm a pretty loud guy in the forest. And so, kept coming around, and I'm about to call it quits at this point, because nobody's answering. And if they aren't answering, it probably means they don't want you around anyway. And so I finally come around the corner and I hear this voice answer back. And I looked around and he said, hello. And I was like, you so-and-so? And he says, yeah. And I said, so-and-so sent me and said you needed a generator. And by this time he had closed distance with me to the point where he was within, and man, I'm gonna get choked up.
I'm already getting choked up.
Oh,
So
man.
keep going.
Within hugging distance. And to see an old man, you can see him here in this picture. This is days later after, we'd already been there a couple times. To come out, it looks like a claim jumper, and he's barefoot and just wells up with tears. He didn't even ask my name.
Yeah.
Just, just reached out.
The fact that you to continue the story, like Shane had spent he spent a few minutes up there, like obviously the time to get up there, but then the time to come back. And then I ended up turning to Jordan. I'm like, do we need to start being concerned? Like, do we need to start going up there on foot to make sure he's okay? And then Shane ended up calling Jordan. He's like, hey, apparently there's cell signal up here. Everything's fine. Come on up. Jordan and I so Jordan's driving, I'm co-pilot, and we finally take our time getting up there to the spot where you guys see where the picture is. And Jordan and I get out of the truck, and this individual again didn't ask for our name, just walked up. He clearly had already been crying, his eyes were welling up, and just gave us both hugs. And he was so happy just to see somebody come check on him. That's hard not to cry, even right now. It's welling up my eyes. I'm glad we got this small picture here so you guys can't see it. But it's just it's for somebody to be that overtaken with emotion and appreciation for what you're doing, and you don't know them. It's not something that, unfortunately, that we really dish out or receive in America a whole lot nowadays.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, this is one of those events that restores your love of humanity
and patriotism.
Yeah. To see, especially a group of volunteers and veterans and soft guys, show up, reunited again. And I say this in terms of reunited. A lot of us were on battlefields in far distant, lands together, doing things for people that were unappreciative in places we shouldn't have been, outside of what we were told we were doing. And I will tell you, this is a far cry from that situation. This is exactly where we should be. This is exactly what we should be doing. This is exactly the mission. This is exactly how those missions should be run. And, for that to see it come together, to see autonomous small units go out and make differences in people's lives for the positive, and not worry about, the media and the retribution and the politics of the situation, just to go out and help is such a gift to them, to yourself, to humanity in general, because this one deed is going to reverberate not only in us but in him, and then the community, people who get to see this and hear about it. This is exactly, I think, what America needs. And that's the silver lining. Is I hate that it happened, and I hate that it happened here in Appalachia, but in terms of the most resilient, God-fearing, Holy Spirit, just vibe that, brought some of the best people on earth together. This was that event.
Yeah, I don't think we could say any more about this particular moment to further describe, because like, dude,
Yeah.
it's gonna be one of my favorite moments for the rest of my life. I can tell you that.
Let's show you guys some other pictures. We also had our buddy Randy and Hunter show up out there. You guys are obviously familiar with Randy, the large gentleman that's two people combined over there on the right side. That's our good man Hunter. Hunter has showed up over and over and over. I actually think he's up there right now, delivering.
Yeah, last I saw, he was helping out on a ridge, I believe.
Yeah. Shout out to Coin Dad as well. Coin Dad has been up there multiple times. In fact, he was out there on a day where we were putting together a repeater on Big Bald. And for those of you guys that haven't heard the story, this is one of those days where we had, a mission to get more comms into more places and to make sure that if anything ever happened like this again, that this was connected. And we had no idea the success that we were going to have with this mission. What you see in this little box in the middle by Mike's left hand is just a little IP67 box that we modified and threw a Meshtastic radio in with a small battery. Obviously set up the solar array there, and then you can see the post where we attached an antenna. And when I say we went from about 60 in the valley before this to almost 200 nodes in Meshtastic, putting this guy up at 5,500 feet was just, we were kind of giddy schoolgirls at that point, Mike.
There's no kinda, like we were giddy schoolgirls.
Yeah,
like we were a bunch of nerds on top of a mountain freaking out.
Yeah. This was one of those coolest moments where, after the seriousness of everything and, everything that was going on, to be able to, kind of get back to one of the missions that we wanted to get out there and not only show people Meshtastic, but to help provide a Meshtastic network where they could reach out of this place. Not only then, but in the future. This was, one of those key places. We lit up the Southeast. If there was a Meshtastic node within about 250 miles, we were connected to it. So we started watching the Meshtastic, and there's a good video on Bitcoin Veterans, if you haven't seen it yet, where we did a screen recording of the Meshtastic map, where we zoom out and you just start to see all these little nodes start to pop up and blink. We started with like Raleigh and Greensboro. We saw it down in Greenville, and then over in Knoxville, Chattanooga, and then all the way down to Atlanta from Western North Carolina. So when you're talking about a breadth of area to be connected, this was one of those things where we're like, hell yeah, like this is a huge win for just emergency comms in general.
We were sitting, so we ended up we had our jet boils with us, and after all that excitement kind of wore off and the hunger started to set in, we're sitting down to, we're preparing all of our little dehydrated meals, and we're all just checking our phones, watching the notifications ring through of all the new nodes that continue to populate. That was a great nerd moment. I really loved that.
If there was any doubt in my mind that I wasn't a nerd, it got completely erased at that moment.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you guys, from doing this and seeing the absolute death and destruction that happened in Western North Carolina, this is something that is going to be a hobby of mine, I think. Taking climbing mountains. I don't think I'm going to put names on every one of them. I'm going to set them up as a repeater and not a router. The difference being a router is identifiable, and it gives geolocation where a repeater doesn't. But the repeaters, if we can climb enough mountains and put enough of these things in high places, we can connect, the entire Eastern Seaboard as far as I'm concerned. And so
you could still set up a trail to get it from the Eastern Seaboard all the way over to the Mississippi and west.
That's right. And so For me, one of the things I do is I love hanging out in the mountains. I love hanging out with my kids and with amazing guys like these two. And if there's an opportunity to go out, climb a mountain, and throw a solar array out there with a Meshtastic radio to act as a repeater, so that more and more people know about these emergency comm situations, whatever the emergency is, whether it's natural disaster or man-made. Um, in these crazy times, this is something that I think is a noble act that people will be extremely grateful for at some point.
Yeah.
And that's enough.
Well, and the cool thing too is like with this Meshtastic network, you can not only you can send direct like private messages to a specific node, or you can broadcast a general message to everybody that you're connected to. And when we got connected, we started seeing like I think we had sent out like a test, like a broad, just like kind of like dispersion. And we had people chiming back in. They're like, "Oh dang, like this is so cool." Like and like the cool thing is that it's very much it's not like some archaic form of text. Like you can send links over this. Like people started sharing like YouTube links. Now it's obviously people I don't know, so I didn't just click on the YouTube link for no reason. It could be some Rick Roll video or worse, but you never know. But it was cool to see it happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Incredible. And yeah, for me, this was one of those things. And, this was, some of the mission that we had embedded reporters with us. So the last 2 days we spent there, we still spent doing missions, running around, meeting with key leaders, doing counter 5th-generation warfare and all that fun stuff. But we had reporters embedded with us. I think we probably changed one of their lives forever. And we got, and the other one was the Epoch Times. And when the photojournalist's story comes out, we'll definitely let you guys know about that. I'm sure she's got some amazing shots of, moving around the area that day. But to go out there and wear out a couple of, different sets of reporters, back to back, it makes you feel kind of good. Just like, yeah, I might be.
She was with us for this climb up to the mountain, guys, and I we ended up having to like slow back a little bit because we were just leaving her in the dust. I felt kind of bad because like we were literally just taking off hard charging up the mountain, and it's just like, oh, okay, hold on, like I guess not everybody's like the same as us as far as like just pushing through the suffering.
Yeah.
But she was tough in her own right. Like the level of conversation and the depth of our conversations that we were having in between these different very highly emotional situations. Yeah, we blew her mind with not only the content we were talking about, but like I think we also blew her mind with how I joked with Jordan while we were out there how learned men we were with the amount of different book references and everything we were dropping on her. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was amazing. And kind of the the overall, theme of Bitcoin veterans, right? We're Bitcoiners, we're veterans. Freedom Tech is the thing that I think we're best at selling. You just say Bitcoin, yeah, okay, great. You start to say Freedom Tech, and people will go, wait a second. Like we got the dorks on our side. We got the nerds who know how to not use their system and get around their system. We got those guys on our side, and automatically, especially in a disaster situation, the antenna just goes up. Like you've got an audience. The amount of people that asked me about Bitcoin, that I got to talk to Bitcoin about, and not only just, during the day, but late nights and continued conversations. Like, you'd meet up on a different shift or a different day and you'd have another conversation with the same guy. What about this? Or what about that? I can't tell you, hats off to all you guys that have, especially from the Christian Rangers. I know you guys were heavy into this kind of stuff by the end. Unbelievable opportunity to introduce Freedom Tech, whether it's Bitcoin, Meshtastic, Starlink, ham radios, you name it. Like to have, to have the tech that puts people back in communication, to know how to use this. This is a real asset, and you will become a real asset to your community, and it's something that you can take home and start to prepare your community to operate on parallel communications and parallel economies. Just great place. And I guess I'll leave it at that. That was one of the coolest things out there as well, is to be able to sit back and be like, all right, man, I'm going to give you this in this kind of dosage, and then let's talk about it later so that you can kind of think about it for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I've all but given up on orange peeling people. So like the fact that like I'm glad that you and Jordan in particular were like, I was basically there as support guys for like for these two orange peeling. Like I would chime in and just like add a little bit more, but it's just like God bless you guys for wanting to orange peel, because I'm exhausted of it at this point.
Yeah. And I think the last picture, we'll get this up with, because Mike, I mean, I thought we would only do an hour. I'm so foolish. I should have known better. It's already 8:35. This is a picture of us four, minus Hunter and Coin Dad and a couple of the other guys that were in the area. I just want to say, what a terrific organization of guys and gals for that matter. This is one of those communities that continuously impresses me, continuously shows up, continuously puts in the hours, doesn't ask for the headlines or the highlight reel or any of those things. Just a bunch of unsung people that are not looking for money, that are not looking for praise, that do the right thing at the right reason for the right time. And that's something pretty amazing to be associated with, to be doing what we're doing in this time as people. And I mean this, like I said earlier, I think we are in the most dangerous time in world history right now. And to know, who the real ones are, man, this is absolutely the place to be. It is the right people to be with. And I am absolutely over the moon with what this organization and its people are doing and affecting others' lives for the better at this point. So thank you guys so much for everything. I mean, it'll choke you up, because it's one of those things that is so huge, and you realize the amount of lives that you're affecting with this is just, you can't, unless you've been, and you go do this kind of stuff, which I highly, highly recommend. It's great for the soul. It's great for it's great for just anything and everything, and humbling yourself every time you get to do something like this is a beautiful thing.
Well, and we talked about how exhausted we were at the very beginning, but there's a difference between being physically and psychologically exhausted from just like working. This stuff recharges your soul. Like this is the 0 point energy for your soul and for your spirituality, for your heart. Like that was like, I wanted to like keep, if it was to the point of where we had to stay out there another week, I don't think I would have had any issues like with energy or anything like that.
No,
like it's crazy what happens when you are, I like to quote the Loki from the TV show of being blessed with glorious purpose, because it's true, dude. It's true though. Like when you're blessed with glorious purpose and you have the drive to do something, especially to help your fellow man.
Yeah.
Like we were running like 16, 20-hour days, like getting like anywhere from 3 to a maximum of like 5 hours of sleep. And we didn't have any issues with it. We all bounced up as soon as we needed to. We got straight to like, just trying to make some like shitty Ranger coffee and getting to the point of getting out in the field and getting to helping.
Yeah.
Like
no drama, no bullshit.
Yeah.
100% signal and just firing on all cylinders, man. Just incredible to see all that come together and to see those people come together.
Yeah. It was great. I don't know. Like, if we keep talking anymore, we're going to like dilute the value.
Let's call it a night, man. We'll probably be back here Tuesday. And, if I've got a broadcast from North Carolina again, happy to do so. But you guys, thanks for everything. Mike, thanks for showing up, man. Thanks for, Randy, Jordan, Hunter, Coin Dad, the rest of you guys, everybody in the background that made everything happen too. I mean, this is a group effort and you guys are awesome. So thank you guys for.
Hey man, you started the ball rolling. Everyone else is just like, all right, we're chipping in, we're going. Let's
Well,
go.
somebody's got to be the big dumb one that kind of
Kicks the door in.
runs in first, right? So we'll see you guys hopefully next Tuesday, and please bear with us because our schedules are all over the place right now, and we can't say enough about this group. So thank you guys. We'll see you next week. Until then, peace.
See you guys.